Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Cars and Coffee with me, Kenny Brown. And I don't know about wherever you are, but today is an absolutely gorgeous day in Indianapolis. After this, we're going to go out and enjoy this day because it's been kind of a long winter. And also, in part of Indiana, they've reduced the mask mandate. So that's like we're moving in the right direction. Today is going to be kind of a special day because we're honored to have a very special guest with us from Impact Racing to talk about safety stuff. Now, everybody knows that when I talk about cars and safety and track days, the one thing, or actually the multiple things that I always I'm getting ahead of myself. I haven't talked about art. I haven't talked about my art. I mean, this week's art is Kenny's Wild Horses again. And this was a piece that that Carrie surprised me with for my birthday in, was it 96? Ron Burton, who's like a really famous motorsport artist here in Indianapolis, commissioned this. And it was, you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 of my Mustangs that were in magazines in 95 and 96. So it's kind of a cool piece. I mean, it is a cool piece. So that's that. And of course, I have my toolbox. As you know, the reason I know so much is I made my living out of that toolbox for over 40 years. And toolbox, and I've been to, I think, just every major racetrack in North America, more than once. So, okay, that was a little background because I don't have my script. I'm really behind the ball here. I've got like the information on the that we're going to talk about, and I've got the Speed Therapy Academy syllabus. There's my script. I forgot all about it. Okay. As you know, that without carrying my script, I'm kind of useless. So we're going to be talking about. If you want to know about cars and tech and stuff, you're in the right place. I forgot to throw that in too. So we're going to the tech talk is the top 3 things, or I said not the top 3 things, but top 3 things that I strongly recommend everybody has as part of their car. To me, they're every bit as important as a good set of tires or a good set of shocks. And we'll get to that in a minute. We've got Ben's going to be here to talk about the safety stuff. And I've got just a couple questions from the Speed Therapy Society that we'll get to towards the end. And again, if you have any questions for either me or Ben, just go ahead and send them in. And at the end, we'll talk about some questions. But the 3 things that I strongly recommend everybody gets, obviously a helmet. You have to have a helmet or you can't go on track. But the other 2 things that are equally important to me are a decent set of gloves and driving shoes. Why do I say that? Well, first of all, when you've got a good set of gloves, it's like anything else. When you work with gloves, doing like work stuff, it's easier. Well, driving a car when you've got gloves on, what happens is all of a sudden you've got a better grip on the wheel. You not have to squeeze the wheel as much. Also, your hands don't get as tired, and that's really important because all the racing gloves have like palms that are non-slip, so you don't have to worry about your hands getting sweaty and slipping on the steering wheel. And then the other thing is a decent set of driving shoes. Now, driving shoes, what's the difference between driving shoes and regular shoes? Well, we'll get to that in a little bit. But the key thing is they're light, and just like anything else, they're light, which like makes your feet work a little bit better. Also, they got really thin soles, so you can really feel the brakes, feel the gas. Because the whole part of the thing, once you're on track, is that you need to be part of the car. And the car needs to be telling you what's happening, and you need to be telling the car what to do. And part of that process is obviously being strapped in nice and tight. Even if you don't have a track seat, got like a set of like rally harnesses. We've got the 4-point harnesses that hold you in place. That's one thing. But then, you've got to communicate to the car through your feet, and the car will talk back to you through your feet. So that's super important. At least to me, it's like it improves my driving significantly. When I wear like regular shoes and drive, my feet get tangled up and they're kind of clunky. So that's why that's the 3 things that I stress, and that's the 3 things we're going to talk about today. Now we don't have a helmet to show you, but we have some shoes and some gloves. And I've kind of broken them off into good, better, and best, at 3 different price points. But before we get into that, these are my gloves, and I can't tell you how long I've had these. They used to be kind of a bright orange. They're kind of, the camera actually makes them look better than they are. But you see the good palms, and I've had these, I can't remember how many years I've had these, but what I like is you can really grip the steering wheel. And then my shoes, my gosh, I've actually worn out the soles on my shoes. Those are my driving shoes, and they're nice and light, and you can see just how not thick the sole is, and you can actually see I've kind of worn the heel and the sole down. That's my shoes, and of course, the third part of the equation is my trusty helmet, and everybody needs a good helmet. I chose, instead of have the face down thing, I chose to put like a rally guard on there. It's sort of like a little sunscreen. And one thing Ben will probably talk about is the Snell rating. Every helmet, when you look inside, somewhere inside, you peel back, it's going to have a Snell rating, and that tells you what year it was certified. And just getting ready for this, I just noticed that my Snell rating is out of date. So I think I'm going to be talking to Ben about a new helmet here pretty soon. So that's to show you that I practice what I preach. My gloves I've had, those are really expensive pair of gloves, by the way. That's why they've lasted so long. And then my shoes, I think it's almost time for new shoes, but that's another story. What we want to do is we want to bring in Ben O'Connor, who we've known for a very long time. He's been a good friend personally, and a good friend of the company. I think we met him back in the mid-'90s when he was working for Bear. And he helped us with some really cool projects back then, like developing a brake package for the Marauders. That was a lot of fun. And well, anyway, I'm kind of babbling on. So why don't we? Ben is coming to us from Phoenix. There he is.
Hey.
Morning, Ben.
Good. We're sharing that beautiful weather, I think. So it's absolutely beautiful here. It's going to be a little warm this afternoon, but really nice right now. So
why don't you give everybody a little bit of background on yourself? Because I know right now you're like the main guy at Impact Racing.
Yeah, so I'm I guess what you call, in my chosen profession, I've done this my entire working career. I worked at a cycle shop for about a year or so when I was, really young. But other than that, I've been in this industry since 95, 94, 95, 85, right out of high school. So a lot of years. Like a lot of people, I got involved in the industry through my passion of cars. My first car was the original sport compact, the Volkswagen, and I worked at a really high-end Volkswagen supplier at the time. It's called Station One, obviously no longer around, but it was in the big heyday when Volkswagens were really big. But me and my buddies would work on those cars, and I had a 56, and through wanting to do something with that and modify that, I really learned a lot about cars. But I also got that passion from my father as well, who was also passionate about cars and racing, and he did some offshore boat stuff and some things like that. But that's kind of how I got started in the industry. Worked at several different things. I've worked everything from counter sales, local speed shop here in Phoenix, Lopers Performance. I worked at an engine, really high-end engine builder, Klein Engines, back in the 90s, mid to late 90s. We built IRL IndyCar engines. We did World of Outlaw sprint car engines. Learned a lot about engines there. And then I spent 11 years at Bear Brakes working there as well. So got a really good rounded experience in the industry, working a lot of different facets of it. I've even spent time on the production side of things. And, I know a ground crankshaft, I'm one of the few people that probably in the country really that knows how to index and grind a crankshaft. I know what that means. I can actually do it. Balance engine assemblies, things like that. I've fabricated cages, built suspension parts, things like that, and off-road pre-runners, things like that. So anyways, that's kind of my tale, if you will.
That's kind of cool about the Volkswagens, because I go back in I'm guessing like mid 70s, we did a whole bunch of hot rod Volkswagens. I mean, that was kind of like a big deal back then.
Yeah.
Scat came to market with all kinds of stuff. We were building dune buggies and then taking the bodies off and putting sports car bodies on top and then hopping up the motors. And actually was racing Formula Vs in the early 70s. So
oh yeah, there you go.
I have a long history with Volkswagens.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
No,
I think so many of us in this industry have, just because they were so prevalent in society at that time, right? In the 70s and 80s, they were just everywhere. You couldn't go anywhere and not see Volkswagen, you know, at any intersection. There'd at least be a couple of them, and every family had one, or, you know, knew someone in the family that did. So,
well, they were just so easy to hot rod.
Yeah.
I mean, like Scat and a bunch of other companies had tons of cool engine parts for them. And then, like I said, you could easily buy like the fender tune, the Baja Bug fenders, and put them on. Take the regular fenders off, put the Baja fenders on. So,
oh yeah,
yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, you could drop the engine in training with the floor jack, right? You didn't need a cherry picker. You didn't, you know, you could just do it right there in your driveway, and
you got 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty cool. So there's something wonderful about that. It's probably one of the best training vehicles for anybody to get experience with working on vehicles, at least modifying them. You know, I can't really think of a better vehicle to learn on than a Volkswagen. And if you own a Volkswagen, you're going to learn, because you're going to be forced to learn, because they weren't the most reliable. But anyways, yeah, very cool.
I think thinking back, I think the 67s were the best year bug.
Yeah, that was last year, the swing axle before the IRS. Yeah.
Because that was, you know, I think the 67s, where they just had the engines were good, everything was good about those cars. Anyway, we're getting off the subject, so let's talk about safety equipment. So
yeah.
Why don't you kind of give us a little overview? What should we? The way I've got it set out, I've got the gloves and the shoes kind of matched up at good, better, and best at price points. So why don't you give a little overview of gloves and shoes, and then we'll start showing some product.
Yeah. So, you know, Ken, you did such a good job of explaining the importance of gloves and shoes and how it interacts with your driving, right? That interface with you and the vehicle. And you're absolutely right. I mean, it's so critical that you have that input, and not just from a performance driving standpoint, that certainly is important. But as we've always said, that the best way to avoid a crash event is to avoid it to begin with, right? To not have a crash event, or be injured in a crash event is not have a crash event. And the best way to do that is to really be focused on your driving. And one of the ways that really helps you focus on your driving is having safety equipment or anything that touches your body, really, that you're comfortable in it. So you're not thinking about it. And it's easy to assume that you put a pair of gloves on, you in the store, you wrap them around a faux steering wheel or whatever, and think, oh, that's okay. It bunches up a little bit, but, you know, it's not a big deal. You know, it doesn't hurt, whatever, and that's fine. But, you know, when you're on track, say in an endurance event or something like that for several hours, you know, any little thing that was okay for a few minutes may become problematic as you go on, and maybe actually start hurting. And even if it doesn't, it even subconsciously can pull your concentration away from the task at hand, which of course is staying focused on your driving. And we're not focused on our driving. That's when mistakes happen, and then that's when you can end up in a crash event. So ergonomics, being comfortable is really critical, and shoes and gloves play a really big part of that.
Okay, so why don't you give us a little overview of the different kinds of gloves? We'll start with that, and then the different kinds of shoes, and then we'll show them.
Yeah, sure. So we have, I think the first one up is going to be our G6 glove. This is a fairly traditional glove that people are really used to. It's sewn on the inside internal stitching. It's got leather embossed on the palms for wear. Nomex fabric for the fire protection, the fire rating, TPP. Just a good basic glove. SFI, yeah, it's SFI rated, so 5. so that you don't have any issues running that, in any of the events that you're going to go to. Just a good basic glove. $85 is retail on that one. So good price point on that. And Kenny could probably tell you, it's actually pretty decently comfortable for a.
Yeah, it's surprisingly comfortable for.
It is surprisingly comfortable.
That price point, it's really comfortable.
Yeah, I think gloves have come a long way, really, in the last few decades in terms of comfort and knowing how to sew them and all that good stuff. So, that's a really good entry level. Like I said, it's going to be legal pretty much anywhere you go. Almost any form of motorsport other than NHRA Top Fuel Dragster or something like that, they're going to require something more at a higher TPP rating. But virtually anywhere else, they're going to be legal. And as you said, the leather is going to help it with the grip on the steering wheel and help prevent blisters. Going to probably a little bit more protection.
Okay, so then we have the good level shoe, which this is a really cool shoe.
That's the nice thing about that shoe. It really finds a good balance of being robust enough where you could wear it all day. If you want to go to the track, do some driving, and then stay in the shoe, not take it on and off to drive, or you're working on it. You've got a pit area, which a lot of times aren't the most ideal scenarios. And you're not always parked on asphalt. Sometimes you park in gravel lots and whatever. It's got enough sole to protect you, from the rocks and things like that. Actually, not a bad crew type shoe. It's used a lot in like off-road racing, where they may be getting it out of the vehicle, and working on it out in the desert, or crew use, things like that. Just a good all-around shoe. You can see it wraps up around the sides. You got some good protection from wear, things like that. Yep, you got the strap there to keep the strings tied up there, so they're not flopping around and getting caught in the pedals or anything. So, leather. It's like a leather suede. So good, robust construction there. Not super light, but lighter than your traditional, walk around type shoe.
Yeah, what I like about this shoe, and I think it's perfect for track day guys, is every time I drive, first thing I got to do is change my shoes, because I can feel the teeniest little pebbles through my driving shoes, so I got to change them right away. So for somebody that's like working on their own car and doing things like that, when I saw this, I thought, boy, what a great idea! That's a great shoe, because you don't have to swap your shoes right away. But you still got a great driving shoe, and it's got a little leather in all the right places.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, for moving up to the better category.
Yeah, so this is going to be this is the Alpha shoe, and so we're going to move up to something that's a little bit more of a true driving shoe. If you look at the sole, you'll notice it's pretty thin. But again, this one isn't super thin, kind of in the middle area. So again, would be okay for driving, and it would be a good track day shoe. It's lighter, so you're gonna, and the thinner sole, but still stiff, but thinner soles, good for heel toe. You're gonna feel the pedal better. You're gonna feel the gas better. You've got protection on the back of the heel there, for wear. So just a good long wearing shoe, lightweight. More of a performance driving shoe. Again, that's a suede as well. And by the way, it's interesting that leather actually works pretty good for thermal protection properties. TPP ratings. It actually works, for fire rating. It's actually very good for that. The downside, of course, of leather is it's a little heavy. So you'll find that a lot of your driving shoes, your performance driving shoes, are true leather, because they do give you that, they form around the foot good so that they're comfortable, but they also give you some good protection there.
I notice it's got a nice little tread design.
Yeah, very similar to the ones that you had.
Okay, now we got the better glove. I think this is the Axis.
Yeah, the Axis glove. No, that's the Alpha, I think. Oh, no, that's the Axis. No, Axis. Yep, that's it. So the difference between, when you start getting up into the more expensive gloves like this, you'll notice this glove has external stitching Now, the external stitching is not just for aesthetics. There is actually a performance aspect to it, and that's that by getting the stitching on the outside of the glove, it doesn't bunch up on the inside of the glove where your fingers are. So it's a very, very comfortable glove to wear. So when you see an external stitch glove, that's really what that's about. I don't know who the clever person was that thought that up. I imagine somebody in a factory somewhere before because traditionally they sew the gloves inside out when you manufacture gloves. They sew them inside and then you pull them back through, and somebody probably put it on that way and said, wow, this is really comfortable. Why don't we just make them like this? So anyways, you see a large prevalence of external stitch gloves. And
you know what I think? I think somebody in the factory screwed up.
Yeah,
and made it wrong one time.
Yeah.
And then they tried to the manager came by and said, hey, this feels pretty good. So,
well, what do we do with these? I don't know. They look pretty cool. Let's see if people will buy them. So, but yeah, now it's really become a thing, and rightfully so. They are very, very, very comfortable to wear that way. And that glove also has the leather inner palms, but it's a little bit thinner. If you compare that to the G6, it's a thinner leather. It's a little finer, gives you a little bit better tactile feel on the steering wheel than the other glove does, but still has a high level protection and wear because of the leather palms.
Okay, now we're moving up into the pro category.
Yeah. So this is literally is the stuff that you'll find a lot of the professional drivers will be using, in people that are really serious about their gloves and shoes. And can appreciate really finely crafted shoes and gloves and just that feel. That's our Phenom shoe. Again, very, very thin sole on that one. So I
really light.
Yeah, very, very, very lightweight. Tan calf skin just helps keep it clean, and it's got a great look to it. Really thin leather again, so it really forms the foot. Even after you wear that for a while and breaks in, it's super, super, super comfortable. Yeah, you notice the soles just, like I said, really thin, almost razor thin there. So again, you're going to feel the pedal input really, really well in that shoe, the gas and the brake. It's very appropriate for heel toe. You're going to feel that well. And again, the lightweight. One thing I want to point out on shoes, and this is, I think, as important as to why you would want to use a true driving shoe versus say your a walking shoe, your tennis shoes, whatever you may typically wear every day, is you want to avoid, at least I think, you want to avoid any kind of a shoe that has like a flared sole on it when you're driving. The reason being is that you can get a false sense of engagement with the pedal with those shoes because the sole, how it overhangs out, flares out away from the shoe. You may think you can be on the brake pedal under a hard braking situation, and because that sole is flared out, it can roll or flip off. If you just catch the edge of the pedal, you may not be aware of it, and you go to really start braking, and it'll push off the edge of the shoe, and next thing you know, you're not on the brake. So with a shoe like this, for sure whether you're on the brake pedal or not, and it's not going to flip or roll off the side of the brake pedal. If you've got engagement with it, say 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, or whatever, it's on it, and you know that. And you can correct too if you want to have more engagement with the pedal as well. So I think that's something worth pointing out. Just one of the downsides of using maybe a street shoe in a performance driving situation. Not only that, the shoes like that are tended to be for comfort, so they're very thick and they're very cushy, so you don't get that engagement with the pedal. You don't get that feedback like you do with a true driving shoe.
Yeah, if I drive the cars with like regular street shoes, if I have to just jump in and drive something I always have to be aware of is my right foot getting caught underneath the brake pedal as I'm going to the extra brake, because that's happened to me a couple times, which really kind of screws off your timing. So that's another good point for driving shoes.
Yeah, and those flares on the bottom would increase the chances of that happening too. You're right. You pull up off the gas pedal, could hook underneath the brake pedal. So, very good point.
Okay, now we've got the Mac Daddy.
Yeah, that is our Alpha glove, And again, it is an external stitch glove like the other one, but a couple key differences on this one. There are two main differences between this glove and the other ones. One is that you've got a silicone embossed palms and fingers, and that's so you get really good grip on the wheel, but also really good feel on the wheel. The leather's great for wear, but a little bit of grip, but it doesn't, because it's an extra layer, you don't have that feel on the steering wheel that you do with a glove like this. The other thing about this glove that's really cool is it's what's known as a pre-curved glove, meaning that the patterns are done in such a way that the fingers are curved, intended to be sewn curved. And the reason that they do that is so that it minimizes the bunching up underneath the fingers when you wrap it around the steering wheel. Because obviously you take something that's flat, the piece of cloth, and then you bend it around, it's going to bunch up and gather up underneath your palms. And anybody that's ever done a lot of driving, and the bike guys really understand this, the motorcycle guys really understand the importance of this. That can really be problematic and very uncomfortable in a pretty short order if it's severe. Right now, the good gloves and stuff, that's sizing is important. You don't want to wear a glove that's too large. You really want to almost a little on the smaller side. You want to kind of squeeze in there so it's not moving around and bunching around. But that glove helps eliminate a lot of that.
And now that you mention that, just as I put my hand in, that's kind of like the natural way the glove is.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't even think about that till you mentioned it. I thought, hey, that's right. It is curved. I put my hand in, it's ready to grab the steering wheel and go.
Yeah, exactly. So that's we sell a lot of those gloves, and even in professional levels of motorsports, it's a really, really widely used glove.
Okay, why don't you do? We don't have any helmets other than mine that's out of date. So why don't you just give us a little quick overview on the things to look for if people are buying a helmet?
Yeah, I think a lot of it in terms of there's always, like many things, and I don't want to say compromise, not compromising safety, but there's compromises in features, in things that maybe you want. One of the things that in helmets is that weight versus style and cost considerations. If you look at your lower end or entry level type helmets, I guess I would say a lot of them are fiberglass construction, and fiberglass is a very, very good material to use for helmets. It has great energy absorption properties. You can manipulate it to flex and absorb energy in certain ways in the production and R&D side of things. But one of the downsides is because of the construction technique or manufacturing process, they tend to be a little thicker and a little heavier, inexpensive, but the sacrifice is going to be, the trade-off is going to be a little bit heavier helmet. And there is a certain safety aspect to that I should mention, in that you want a light a helmet as you can possibly afford, because of secondary injuries and things like that. There's of course impact resistance and preventing concussions, but a lot of that has to do also with your head moving around. And the lighter helmet you have, the less the velocity it is of your helmet moving around in an event. If you can imagine, you take a ping pong ball versus a bowling ball, right? There's a big difference in weight, and objects in motion stay in motion, that whole thing. So the lighter helmet is actually not going to be moving as fast if you happen to impact something in the vehicle during an event. So there's that. And then also neck injuries, things like your basilar skull fractures, where where your neck bones meet up at your skull there. Things like that are all important too. So when you're looking at helmets, construction of the helmet, of course, is one thing. But a lot of it in terms of impact protection, they're all pretty good, right? They all have to meet certain standards. And, if you get a Snell rated helmet, they all have to meet a minimum standard. Now as a manufacturer, of course, we always push for beyond that. You want to be well beyond that. And so there's that as well. But a lot of it really comes down to things like style, preferences, on how the looks of the helmet, and maybe the how much visuals you want to have with the helmet. So if you take, like, say, for example, and I do have one example here. This is like basically an example of a copy of our Vapor helmet, and the eye port is fairly narrow on this one. And some people prefer that. It gives them a little bit more feeling of protection and maybe focus on the task at hand, maybe more of a direct look. Whereas some of the other helmets we do, like the 1320 and the Draft, have a wider eye port, or a taller eye port. And that can be important for people that, say, are a little claustrophobic, or just want to have a larger engagement of their situational awareness. We see a lot in off-road because there's so much going on with the terrain and stuff. They like to be able to see as much, even that peripheral stuff. Whereas typically in road racing and drag racing, they really want to reduce the amount of that peripheral input that's coming in, and again, stay focused, on the track. So there's a difference there in terms of the eye port as well. The rest of the things really are just, like I said, color and aesthetics. Really is the big thing there. And again, lightweight, costs more money. It costs a lot more to manufacture, say, a full carbon fiber helmet versus a fiberglass helmet. But in the middle of the range between your carbon fiber helmets and your fiberglass helmets, there are composite helmets, and we do a line of composite helmets, or Draft, or Vapors, even the Champ, are all composite helmets. And these are just a blend of several different fabrics in some cases, of all kinds of things in there, carbon and Kevlar and a little bit of fiberglass, some other newer technologies and stuff that we've that have come to market here in the last few years. And those can be some of the, I don't want to say safest, that's not really the correct way to put that, but in terms of testing performance, laboratory testing performance, they test very, very well. And they're lightweight. They're not as light as say a full carbon fiber, but they're pretty close and lighter than, say, your traditional fiberglass helmet. So I guess the point I'm making is that exceptional value in that price point. You start getting that, $800, $900 price point, which seems like a lot of money, but in the terms of helmets, in the world of helmets, that's kind of middle range. But there's a lot of performance to be found in that area, that price point of helmets, whether it's ours or some of the other manufacturers for that matter.
Okay, the other thing too is we get a helmet. You want to make sure that it's got these little things on the side.
Yeah,
I can tell you why.
Yeah, any helmet that has a Snell rating of 2015 or newer has to be set up for the post. It's a threaded insert in the helmet that allows you to use whatever, a Hans or a Next Gen or whatever device anchors, and it's all the same thread. It's universal. They all come together. It's the same. It's an M6 fastener, so you can take off your old helmet and you can put it on the new helmet, and you just screw it in and torque it the right proper torque spec and use some thread locking agent on there, and you're good to go.
Okay, cool. Something I neglected because I'm always forgetting unless I'm reminded. If you're just joining us, I'm Kenny Brown. This is Cars and Coffee. And if you're on Facebook, like, and if you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, and bell. Okay. So one thing I saw, let's see, Samantha had a question. Okay, I don't know if you can see that.
Which one?
That's the Axis Mini Axis Junior.
Oh yeah, huh?
Sizes.
So are you answering her question?
Yeah. So there is a junior. This is a Mini Axis Junior glove right there.
Oh yeah. So that one, yeah. So in the Axis we do have the junior sizes, correct?
Do they have the junior sizes?
You have any other, anything else that come in junior sizes?
No, just that one.
What about shoes or stuff like that? I'm
No
sure you get.
shoes. Yeah, no shoes. Yeah. Yeah. The challenge with shoes is the soles. And from a manufacturer standpoint, just volume versus sales. I'm not going to lie about that. It's just, you know, having the sales to be able to support the manufacturing process, because while we manufacture about 80% of what we do, we manufacture right there in Indianapolis. Shoes are one of those things that we don't manufacture in-house. Actually, a lot of that comes from our parent company, Sparco. But a lot of that's gated by minimum order necessities in the soles themselves. So unless you're selling a really lot of something, it can be quite expensive to bring to market. And then you've got a product that's not really priced right for the market either. So anyways, it's difficult to do those smaller sizes like that. It's not that we've abandoned it. We're working on that right now. Actually, we're kind of hoping we have something going to the 2022 season. Likewise, helmets, although we control that in-house, so it's certainly better from that standpoint. And so we'll have a line of youth helmets in here in the next several months. We'll be releasing our youth helmets. We've had them in the past, so we're going to bring them back. We do get a lot of requests for that, and so we'll have those as well. And we do have suits. We have a line of we call our mini racers that we're doing right now. It is actually literally a miniature version, like the Mini Access Glove, miniature version of our adult racer suit. So it's a full Nomex. You know, it's got the floating gusseted sleeves. It's actually a nice suit.
Okay. Well, I think we're coming up to question time.
Yes, we are.
And I've got two questions from the Speed Therapy Society.
Yeah, before you do that, if anybody has questions for Ben, he's going to be hanging out for the rest of the show. So when we go to the live Q&A at the end of the show,
Which is coming up very soon.
Very soon. Yeah. Feel free to add your questions. Thank you, Ben.
You got it.
Okay, I got kind of the same question from two different people. Let's see, Mark and Sal. Mark wants to know adjusting coilovers for track, and Sal wants to know about motorsports shock tuning. Okay, that is a subject that I just could not cover in a couple of minutes. It boils down to a lot of factors. You know, what are the shocks? What are the valve? What are the spring rate? You know, what's the suspension geometry? I mean, it's a really hard question for me to answer. Although if you're in the academy, we cover that in weeks 4 and 12 through 14. 4 is shock theory and design, and 12 to 14 is basically tuning and adjusting. But I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into the single adjustable, double adjustable. It's really, really hard for me to answer, not knowing what shocks that you've got or what the rest of the suspension is. I mean, certainly you could sign up for a 15-minute consult, and I could try to steer you. If it's our stuff, I can tell you exactly what to do. If it's somebody else's, I'll just try to do the best I can, but without having actual knowledge or experience with it. So, I mean, it's a little, you know, just the basic thing I can say is if you've got double adjustable shocks, bump gets you from turn in to apex, and the rebound gets you from apex off because it's controlling how fast the spring unwinds. So, yeah, sorry I couldn't give you more information, but it's a really tough question to answer because I won't say it's complicated, but just there's a lot of factors that figure into it. So, Harry is coming up with her computer.
Yes. Are you finished?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't give you any more information, but like I said, it's a really tough subject.
So
Just on the spot. Oh, I'll do this.
we're ready for some questions. So if you have any, just add them to the chat and Kenny will answer them. We had a question earlier this week about camber bolts and how they work. Can you
Sure.
explain that?
Okay, camber bolts is like if you need a little more camber and you can't get at the top, which is pretty inherent with like the S197s and even the SN95s. I mean, we typically in our cars run 2.5 degrees negative on the hot side, 2 degrees on the cold side. Hot side being if it's a clockwise track. And a lot of times you can't get enough extra camber. So what we do is we go to something called a camber bolt. And this is kind of what it looks like. Now I'm going to take the nut off, and then take the washer off. And it's also called a cam bolt. I don't know if you can see that, but as I turn it, there's a lobe, a cam lobe, just like a camshaft. There's a cam lobe. And what happens is you put it in. We'll typically do it in the bottom strut hole. And what you can do is you can just watch it. You keep turning it until you just keep turning it until you can see the wheel drop in and you get maximum negative camber. And that gives you about 1 degree at the strut. So that's kind of camber bolts. They're really handy if you need to get more camber. I put it back together. They come with this kind of this funky little washer, and of course they've got locking nuts, so you don't have to worry about these are metallic locking nut. So yeah, that's cam bolts, and we've got them for S197 and SN95s.
Okay.
SN95 takes a bigger one.
Okay, looks like people are out enjoying the weather.
Well, that's a good
so
thing.
This is your last call for questions. Ben, it was wonderful having you on. It's great. It's always fun having you. And, when you guys were doing this, I know you're doing a lot of tech, but all I could think of is Home Shopping Network when you're explaining it.
Yes.
Maybe we should call it Car Shopping Network.
Wait, if you order now.
There's probably something to that, actually.
That's what I was thinking.
Call
too.
Motor Trend.
So anyway, I think that's going to be the end of our show. We don't have any questions, and I think as long as everybody else is out enjoying the weather, we will too. Anybody that's watching the replay, we thank you, and we will be here again next Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
Yeah, next Saturday I'm going to have a special guest coming to you from St. Paul, Minnesota.
No, you're not.
So we'll wait for that. So just in a little bit of a recap. I mean, I stress. Obviously you have to have a good helmet. You have to have current Snell rating, and you have to have the posts. And once you get beyond novice, you need to start thinking about the Hans or head and neck restraint. And actually, Impact has the most reasonable priced ones out there. If you're advanced, you really should have it. It's just something. If your wife knows about it, she'll make sure you have it. So it's kind of like we don't have any of them. We'll have to show them another week. But we've got a pretty decently priced head and neck restraint. And like for novice, you're good. But once you start going really fast, intermediate, especially advanced, you really should be thinking about having a Hans type device. It's just safety. The number one thing that we look at when I'm building a car or anything else is safety. Because when you're going really, really fast, you got this great big massive kinetic energy roaring down the track. Good things can happen and bad things can happen. So you always want to prepare for the bad things. But a good helmet, a good pair of gloves, like my trusty no fear gloves that I've had. God, I don't know how many years I've had these, but they still work really good, and they've got a really nice palm. And my worn out track shoes. So I think I need to be.
It's hard to give up track shoes though, because they fit your feet so well once you get them.
Yeah,
so
that's the other thing. Once you kind of wear track shoes for a little bit, they sort of like fit your feet. Same thing with gloves. Because after a while, the gloves kind of like conform to your hands, and they're really, really comfortable.
Well, guess what? We have some last call questions.
Okay, last call questions.
Ben, we have a couple for you. So we have, let's see, where is the question? Ben, if you are not able to try on the helmets, what's the best way to measure for the fit?
That's a really good question. Yeah. So, and because of different shapes of people's heads, there's nothing like trying one on for sure. But what you want to do is you want to measure around the crown of your head, right? Really, you're trying to keep it, you know, the largest part right here, right about an inch above your brow here and around the back of your head. And use a soft tape, but if you don't have soft tape, piece of string, you know, and just make sure you right place, and then you can use a yardstick or tape measure, whatever you have to measure the string. And then by that, we've got a chart on our website, as most of the manufacturers do. You can take that measurement and compare it to sizing, and then get a good idea of what your size is. Where it does get tricky is, like I said, is, you know, you can have two people with the same circumference but have radically different shaped heads. So what works for one person may not always work for the other person. Now, our helmets have a tendency to have a pretty good amount of what we call comfort foam in them. They're very plush. They're one of the most comfortable. We hear this all the time because, oh my God, it's the most comfortable helmet I've ever worn. But because of that, sorry for the plug, but because of that, it also allows to make up for different variations in people's head shapes. So that certainly helps. Now, there are certain brands of helmets that are just better for certain head shapes than others. Ours being a US-based company tends to favor more oblong shaped heads, whereas manufacturers manufactured in the Asian markets tend to favor more round shapes, and that's just because of the people that that are in those regions. It works for their market, so you'll kind of find that. That's not a rule, but across the board rule. But as a general, you'll find that to be the case in many instances. So that's your best deal. And the other thing that we have is, if you find a helmet, if you get it right here, then everything else can fall into place by changing cheek pads, things like that. All of our cheek pads are removable from the helmet, and we have different thicknesses available. So if it's loose, we've got thicker ones. If it's tight, we can put thinner ones in it. If you wear glasses, we have what we call a V style cheek pad, which, literally, sorry, in the camera here, it's hard, it goes around the ear like that. So it puts only a little bit of pressure on the temple of your glasses versus, an entire thing which pushes your ear into the temple can make it pretty uncomfortable to wear. We also have, wiring kits which have ear cups, so the cheek pads would be different for those. Things like that you can use to fine tune the fit of the helmet.
Okay, I can tell you that on my helmet, first thing I did is to pull the cheek pads out. I was just like,
Nobody saw that.
Yeah.
Do you want to do that again?
Yeah. I said the first thing I did on my helmet was pull the cheek pads out because they put it on. I was like,
That's right.
But I see we got some more good questions coming in.
Yeah, we do. Okay, so we have another one for you, Ben. First of all, Calvin is saying he thanked you for the session today, and he says, I'll be installing my new impact harnesses in my car as soon as we're done. So that's cool, Calvin.
Very cool.
Joe Johnson has a question. Is there a lot of difference in a Snell 2020 and a 2010?
Yeah, the 2010 to 2020, a pretty good jump, really, because they had a pretty significant change in 2015. And again, not as great of a change in 2020, but a little bit of a change in 2020. So everybody understands the idea of the Snell Foundation's homologation of helmets. What the idea there is, by changing the standards every 5 years, what it does is it gives manufacturers time to develop to the next standard. But the idea is that they incrementally increase the requirements that the helmet has to pass in terms of impact resistance and say other things, whether it works at hot or cold temperatures, low speed, high speed, different types of impacts, whether it's a pointy or what they call a hemispheric, impact, like a roll bar, say, for example, or a flat type impact, things like that. And anyways, they change those standards every 5 years with the theory that helmets get incrementally safer every 5 years. And I would argue that they do. I mean, the requirements have certainly went up, and it's, task all the manufacturers with really having to up their game every 5 years. If you want to stay in the market, you have to meet these standards. So what you're buying today truly is, and I can't say definitively safer because it's not, it would be, irresponsible for me to say that, but in theory is safer than the helmet that you would have bought in 2010.
Okay.
That's a good question. Okay, one more.
Another reason I need to update my helmet from a Snell 10.
And helmets do degrade like most things, because of the resins and composites and even the comfort foam and the liner. These are all plastics, petroleum-based products, and over time they degrade, they get harder, they crack, and whatever. So it's just a good idea to replace a helmet, minimally every 10 years, and ideally every 5 years for that reason. But that would be the other reason for changing a helmet too.
Okay, good. We have one more question for you. Then, first of all, Brad added to the comments a link to from Impact Racing on our site to measure.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Measure.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah. So it's a racing helmet sizing chart. So if you click on that link, you'll be able to get to it and get the information you need. Okay. We also have Rory has one question to you. Do you recertify belts? Do you recert belts?
That's a yes and no. We don't recertify belts because the webbing again degrades, and that's the whole reason for the whole dating thing, so that people know, is due to the webbing itself. It is based on a worst case scenario that if the belts are left out in the sun for 2 years, they do degrade and they really lose a lot of their strength after a few years, and that's why that requirement is every few years to change them. So we don't recertify them, but what we do is we re-web them and then affix new dating tags. So in a sense, people would consider that recertifying, but in reality, we're reconstructing the belts and then affixing new labels to them, and that's quite affordable compared to a new set of restraints. I think the latch and links are $59.95, and then cam locks are, I want to say, $79.95, I believe.
Yeah, because a lot of sanctioning bodies, there's a limit on how old the belts can be, and the tech guys will look. The belts are all dated, look to see how old they are.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Related to that question, Ben, do most sanctioning bodies now use the FIA criteria versus the SFI?
So really, in the United States, no. Most sanctioning bodies are governed by the SFI or adopt SFI standards, homologations. Road racing is different. Road racing, in a lot of cases, uses both. A combination, though, they accept either FIA or SFI. You're going to find more prevalence, more FIA homologated products typically you'll find in road racing. Not that you can't use SFI. That's just the nature of it's kind of, I guess, goes back to that tie with the European market where road racing is more popular. I don't exactly know 100% why that is, but it's just the way it is. You're going to find, where companies like Sparkle are very, very big in road racing. There's a lot of FI homologated products because of their European-based company, and a lot of the companies you find that are prevalent road racing, that's typically the case. Whereas if you get outside that market, dirt oval track, drag racing, off-road, pretty much anything else, you're going to see a large prevalence of SFI homologated products. And Snell tends to go on the helmet side. It's a different organization. You'll find usually both, on all forms of motorsports. It's very widely regarded across the world as being a very acceptable standard. I could get into, there's more involved in the whole FIA, SFI thing. There are definitely politics involved. FIA is not just the homologation arm of the safety equipment, but it's also a sanctioning body. So it is in their best interest, of course, as a sanctioning body to require FIA products. And I'll leave it at that. Whereas SFI is completely independent of any form of sanctioning body. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, I saw some other questions come in.
Yeah, so Ben, I think that's all the questions for you. We'll keep you on for a couple more minutes, but I'm going to ghost you now. So thank you And we really appreciate all the information you shared with us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
Mhm. Okay, Kenny, we have a question from Brian West. Do you recommend maintaining bump stops on an S197 in the rear?
Okay, I'm guessing he's talking about the bump stops that bolt onto the axle. Check them out. We don't use them at all. In fact, we actually, on the cars that we set up and do, we not only throw the bump stop out, but we'll take where the bump stop sits on the axle, there's a little piece that sticks out, we'll whack that off. Just because, I mean, we run our cars lower, and there's going to be a bump stop on the shock to keep it from compressing all the way. More importantly, we're running like much higher spring rates. But here's what happens if you don't take that bump stop off and you've got a lowered car. As soon as you go around a corner, as soon as the car rolls over and comes on that bump stop, you have no suspension, which means the back of the car will just get really loose on you. So that's why we take it out. We've had people call and say the car's loose. I said, you have the bump stops. They take them out and it's all better. So no, we throw them away.
Okay, we have another question here from Andrew. If I drive my car to the track 40 miles, is that enough to bed the brakes? It's a good question.
Ooh, it's a good question, but it depends. If you're talking about track brakes or race brakes, the answer is no. In fact, they'll do just the opposite. You'll glaze the brakes over. And the reason I say that is when you bed brakes, you need to get them up to critical temperature so that the volatiles that are locked in the brakes from manufacturing all go away, and you got just this compound left. And when you're bedding brakes, I mean, you go through the process, you really fast and get on the brakes. You keep doing that a number of times until you get to the point where you smell the brakes and you hit the brake pedal and you got no brake pedal left. And it's just really hard. The car won't stop. That's the point where you just coast back into the pits, let it cool down completely, and the next time you go on track, they're ready to go. But that typically, you'll waste the first session of a weekend bedding brake pads. I have an answer. We offer pre-bedded brake pads, and I've got them in like 12 different compounds, depending on if it's a novice, advanced, depending on what tires, everything. I can pick the right brake pads for it, and we can ship them to you pre-bedded. So when you get to the track, you just put them on and you drive. The problem with driving track pads on the street is they don't get to that critical temperature. Like say, for example, the pads I had on Ruby, my track car, my rotors typically run around 1200 degrees. And the pads I use, the operating range is 400 to 1600. So at 1200, I'm right in the middle of that operating range, which means to get those pads bedded for the first time, they've got to come up to at least 1000 degrees. I'll say minimum 800 to 1000 degrees before they're actually bedded. So you're not going to do that on the way to the track. And if you've got a pad like that, that's got like 400 on the low end, if you're not getting the brake pads up to temperature, what happens is they'll glaze over. And then you have a really hard time. Then you have to do some real big 100-mile-an-hour stops to try to get the glaze off, or you got to sand the glaze off and start all over. So unless you've got, now we do have, if you're a novice, we've got some pads you can drive the track, but they've got an upper limit on temperature, about 1000 degrees. I think we have one set that you could drive to the track. It's up to 1200 degrees. I mean, if you're driving on the street too much, they're going to just make noise and make dust because they're not in their operating temperature. Okay.
Yeah, Brian Hutchins says he just dissolved Hawk's HPS in two sessions. So.
Yeah, they're only good to about 800 degrees. I mean, it's a street pad. I mean, you call me up, I'll get you fixed up with some pre-bedded track brake pads that you'll love. What we're using right now, they're really easy on rotors and they work really well.
They're pretty well priced.
And they're really well priced. They're cheaper than Hawk. So
yeah, and that reminds me, what did you say? Call me up. You can always schedule a 15-minute consult with Kenny. So if anybody wants to talk to him, pick his brain on specific things, we'll post a link up in the comments, and you can schedule a 15-minute call with him. So anyway, I think that is it for today. We have, let's see.
it's on the front door.
Yeah, I think so. So anyway, that's it for today. So Ken, I'll let you
Okay.
sign off.
Well, we will wrap it up. Any of our Speed Therapy Academy folks are here. I will see you Tuesday night. And the Alumni Speech Therapy Academy meeting is Wednesday night, and then another Speech Therapy Academy on Thursday night. So I get a busy week this week. And so with that, I have no idea what we're talking about next week. Tell me what you want me to talk about. So send it in to the Speech Therapy Society, and we'll kind of, and send your questions in. Because like I say, I talk about what you guys want to know about. So send your questions in to Speech Therapy Society. Give me some subjects you want me to talk about. And with that, I will see you next week. Enjoy the weekend. I know it's gorgeous here. I hope it is where you